Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome. I am Pastor Guy, and this is Pastor's Corner. For those of you who are new to the corner, I'm Guy Watley, and welcome to my corner of the internet. It's a place where we get together once a week to encourage the believer on how to be in the world, but not of the world. If you like what you hear, please follow us on Facebook and YouTube. You can find us there live Sunday morning, 10:30 Pacific Daylight Time, Lord willing. And we'd love to have you tune in, give us likes and thumbs up and all those things that we do on social media. Welcome. We're glad that you're here this morning. One of the things about doing a weekly video, I'm not, I'm not dipping my toe into doing it every day. But one of the things about doing a weekly one is sometimes things have happened a week ago, and it happened with Charlie Kirk and his assassination, and it happened on a Wednesday after I had already sent out a video. So I didn't comment on it for a week, obviously. So those things happen. And sometimes I'm a little behind. But I wanted to talk today about another death. And I know we've been talking about people dying for, it seems like, a month or more. It has been interesting in the Christian community, in the greater evangelical community. But last Thursday, the evangelical, and I don't want to get into that sense, but in the strict sense of the evangelical community, Bible-believing Christians, we lost a giant, and his name was Voddie Baucham. Now, I recognize that some of you may have never heard that name before. He wasn't broadcast throughout the secular media when he died, and there's political reasons for that. I think, as well as just a hatred of Christianity in general. But Voddie Baucham was a giant of a man, played college football, but he was an African American. And I encourage you, if you have never heard of him and maybe just want to listen to one sermon, just get on YouTube and type in Voddie, Voddie, and he will come up. So what I'm going to do today, just to kind of inform you, Christianity Today, which, by the way, I do not recommend you read, but they put out an obituary, and it's written by Kate Shellnut, and it's a good obit and an informative one for people who may not know who Voddie was. And so I'm going to read that mainly for my Pastor's Corner today, and then, talk a little bit about it. Now, Voddie was what is called a Reformed Christian, and the difference, just in a one of the differences, let's just say that, than to me, technically, while I'm Reformed, technically I don't really fit into their camp, mainly because of my end times understanding of Scripture, the pre-millennial rapture of the church. I believe in that. I still believe in that. I think that that's biblical. Voddie would have been what's called an amillennial believer, one who believes that the church is going to go through the rapture and that Christ will come, or going to go through the tribulation, and that Christ will come after the tribulational period to rapture the church and to rule and reign. So I don't want to get into all that, but otherwise, this guy was a theologian. He was a writer. And let me just read his obituary. I'll put this up real quick in front of the camera. That's Voddie, and so you you can have a visual of who he was. So Voddie was a popular Reformed speaker and author. Voddie Baucham Jr. died suddenly after suffering a medical emergency on Thursday, which would have been September 25th. He was 56 years old. Throughout his ministry career, Baucham appealed to the authority of Scripture while speaking of clashes between Christianity and secular worldviews around social justice, critical race theory, moral relativism, and religious tolerance. The father of 9 advocated for home education and family discipleship. After serving nearly a decade in Zambia, Baucham was just a month into his first semester as president of Founders Seminary in Cape Coral, Florida, when he died. In a video with Founders Ministries President Tom Askell, Baucham said he was excited to be training men with sharp minds, warm hearts, and steel spines. Founders Ministry announced his death Thursday evening. The ministry asked for prayer for his family and quoted Psalm 116:15. Precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints. Baucham had undergone quadruple heart bypass surgery in 2021, flying from Africa back to the U.S. for urgent treatment for heart failure. At the time, he said he was in the final stages of catastrophic event and within an hour or so of death. After his death, leaders across Reformed and Southern Baptist ministries grieved online. Ligonier Ministries, G3 Ministries, Westminster Theological Seminary, the Center for Baptist Leadership, Doug Wilson's Canon Press, Answers in Genesis CEO Ken Ham, and the Gospel Coalition all posted tributes. Voddie was a Reformed preacher who loved the truth, but note what you see in his sermon videos: tears. He had a soft heart. He loved his hearers. He knew the gospel's power, wrote author and professor Owen Strachan. In his speaking and in his books like Fault Lines, By What Standard, and It's Not Like Being Black, Baucham challenged Christians to resist cultural assimilation and defend biblical convictions in the public square. The culture doesn't dictate truth, he frequently emphasized. The gospel dictates truth. In Family-Driven Faith and Family Shepherds, he described Christian parents' responsibility to disciple their kids. He stressed the importance of husbands and fathers. Baucham's message grew even more determined in the past decade as progressive Christianity, racial justice, and LGBTQ movements continued to swell. He argued that social justice was not interchangeable with biblical justice, and that modern ideology around racism positioned it as a systemic issue rather than sin within the human heart. Baucham wasn't raised in Christianity and often spoke of God finding him when he wasn't even looking. His mother, Frances, was a teenager when he was born in California in 1969. His young parents married quickly and briefly, but his father left by the time he was a toddler. Baucham spent most of all his childhood as an only child, living in South Central Los Angeles. His mother was hardworking, no nonsense, but also a Zen Buddhist who prayed regularly at home. When Baucham was 12, he and his mom moved to South Carolina to live with his uncle, a Marine, who had served in Vietnam. It was the first time he could remember having a man in the house. After attending high school in Texas, Baucham aspired to attend the Air Force Academy, but ended up going to New Mexico State University to play football. On the campus at La Cruces, Baucham heard the gospel for the first time as a college freshman. A leader with Campus Crusade for Christ, Steve Morgan, walked him through reading the Bible, and answered his questions about God and sin. Within a few weeks, Baucham came to faith while crying on the floor of the locker room. The next year, he transferred to Rice University in Houston and played football there with a towel saying Philippians 4:13 tucked into his pants. He preached on Sundays at a local church that several players attended. I go for God in everything I do, Baucham said. Already a licensed Baptist minister as a college sophomore, that includes football. The young preacher met and married Bridget Wilson, the summer before his junior year, and they soon welcomed their first child. He ended up transferring to Houston Baptist University and joining a Southern Baptist church to get a scholarship. He wrote in his book, Fault Lines, that he asked the registrar two questions. What is a Southern Baptist church? And where do I find a black one? Those are important. Baucham went on to study at Southwestern Biblical Baptist Theological Seminary and Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary and speak at several Southern Baptist schools and state conventions. Inspired in part by Promise Keepers, calls for racial reconciliation and New Testament verses on Christian unity, Baucham put away the Afrocentric t-shirts he wore in colleges, stopped seeking out only black churches, and started serving in spaces where he was the minority. Baucham taught and pastored at several Baptist churches in Texas and beyond. In his first book in 2004, The Ever-Loving Truth, he wrote that diversity is not a biblical mandate, nor is it realistic. A CT review of it that year said that such an assertion was surprising to see from an African-American author. Committed to homeschooling his growing family, Baucham also spoke out against Christians sending their kids to government-run schools. He called on Southern Baptists to leave public schools and to investigate whether the local school districts promoted homosexuality. He stated, it's not in here, but he stated that you shouldn't be surprised when you send your kids to Rome for education and they come back Romans. Baucham planted Grace Family Baptist Church in the Houston suburbs in 2006. That year, he also visited Africa for the first time, staying with fellow Reformed Baptist pastor Conrad Mwabi during a conference. Baucham visited another half dozen times before moving to Lusaka, Zambia with his wife and 7 youngest kids in 2015 to help launch African Christian University. He served as the founding dean and divinity school lecturer at the university for 9 years before returning to the U.S. last December. In addition to taking on his role at Founders Seminary, Baucham led Wrath and Grace, a media ministry, confronting and creating culture for Christ, and continued to speak at church events. He had scheduled a tour in Canada in October. He leaves behind a wife, 9 children, and several grandchildren. His oldest daughter, Jasmine, is also a Christian writer and educator. So that's Voddie Baucham. From what I know about him, that was a good encapsulation of who he was. I guess from my perspective and what I knew about him and listened to him, I grieve for the African American community because this was a man who commanded the pulpit and he commanded respect because of who he was, and he spoke into the African community, specifically men, admonishing them and encouraging them to have families, to be at home. The African community is decimated with single-parent mothers. It is epidemic proportions. And he was attacking that and attacking it well and coming at it from a biblical perspective. There wasn't a topic that he didn't speak on well. He was against, the Black Lives Matter nonsense and just spoke truth into the culture. Definitely worth listening to. And listening to his sermons online and speaking engagements, as it were. So, as this news came, it was a gut punch to the evangelical community. We have lost some giants recently, and whether you go back to Billy Graham or to James Dobson, John MacArthur, R.C. Sproul. I usually leave some out. Charles Stanley, and then a young man, everybody says destined for the presidency, Charlie Kirk, and now Voddie Baucham. We want to ask, what's God doing? God, what are you doing? Why are you removing these men? Well, granted, some of them were north of 80 years old, and it's to be expected. God will raise up whom he will raise up. His church is not going to flounder. And what men like Voddie and Charlie started will continue on and will grow ever stronger. And God will build his church, and he will fill the pews, and he will return for us. We need not worry about it or stress it. We just put our shoulder down and grind on and continue to preach and teach the gospel of Jesus Christ. God is so much bigger than us, and he is so much bigger than his church, but he's the one building it. And so when we lose men of the word like a Voddie Baucham, if 20 years ago, we wouldn't even know who he was without social media. He would be on the fringes of, just like a Charlie Kirk, of, Christian, we just wouldn't have access. I mean, a lot of you knew who Charlie Stanley was because he's on TV every Sunday morning with men like David Jeremiah. They landed a deal and got on Sunday morning TV and CBS or someplace. And so you saw him. They were willing to put on one Christian program a week, and so that was going to be it. Which was a blessing and very impactful. So anyway, I just wanted to bring Voddie to you and pray for his family. He's got 7 kids at home still, and he wasn't a rich man. He wasn't filled with wealth because of his books and what he chose to do. He sacrificed, like most preachers do who love the Lord. He sacrificed. There is a fundraiser for his children and his wife. She's a stay-at-home mom. She's never had an outside job. She has raised her kids, discipled her kids, much like my wife does. And, they depended on Voddie for everything as far as finances. And so be praying for them. Pray that that those around them will circle the wagons and make sure that they're taken care of, and that they stay strong in the faith, as they have lost a giant. And so, yeah. But precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints. And Voddie Baucham was definitely a saint. And at 56, that's 6 years younger than me. Wow. My dad had a heart attack at about that age. So it does cause you to think, Lord, how long will we be here? What do you have for me? Who will take care of my kids and family? And we just look to heaven and say, I know you will. God says, I got that. I'm Pastor Guy. This has been Pastor's Corner. And I encourage you to look up Voddie. And Voddie Baucham. And you be blessed and have a wonderful week.